General Motors had decided this engine would never go in this car. One Chevrolet dealer found the paperwork system that let him order it anyway, and GM's own employees processed the request without ever treating it as anything unusual. This isn't a story about fooling a race inspector. Nobody in this video is standing trackside with a clipboard. This is a story about fooling a company's own order forms, which means it's a different kind of trick than anything else on this channel, and it's worth knowing that going in. Chevrolet's corporate policy when the Camaro launched in 1967 capped it at a 396 cubic inch engine. Nothing bigger was supposed to go in that body officially ever. The kind of restriction insurance and liability concerns tend to produce once a manufacturer is stressing about small cars carrying too much engine. Somewhere inside GM's paperwork, though, sat a completely different system built for a completely different purpose: the Central Office Production Order, or COPO. It existed to route special non-standard vehicle requests through the factory. Fleet orders mostly, taxi packages, police spec cars. Requests that didn't fit the normal consumer ordering process, but were routine and boring by design. Nobody built COPO to launch a muscle car. Nobody staffing it was cross-checking each order code against Chevrolet's own engine-to-model restrictions. It was a lane built for boring paperwork. And boring paperwork is exactly what got waved through without a second look. Don Yenko ran a family Chevrolet dealership in Canonsburg, Pennsylvania, and he wasn't some dealer dabbling in performance parts as a sales gimmick. He was a genuine, accomplished racer, national championships, a class win at Sebring, who happened to also sell cars for a living. That's why Chevrolet's own people eventually took him seriously enough to work with him rather than shut him down. When the Camaro arrived in 1967, capped at 396 cubic inches, Yenko didn't wait for the company to change its mind. He bought Camaros straight off the lot, pulled the 396, and dropped in a 427 cubic inch L72 engine sourced from Corvette production, officially rated at 425 horsepower, done by hand at his own dealership, one car at a time. It worked. It also didn't scale. Manually swapping engines in every single car was slow and expensive, and by 1968, demand had outgrown what his shop could physically build. So Yenko went straight to Chevrolet, specifically to Vince Piggins, the company's own performance product manager, and pitched a factory-built run instead of another year of dealership labor. The agreement that came out of that conversation was COPO 9561, a Camaro built on the regular assembly line that left the factory with the 427 L72 already installed, fully covered under GM's own warranty, for a package price of just $489.75. A car making more horsepower than anything Chevrolet was officially supposed to allow in that body. Approved, built, and shipped through the company's own normal channels. Chevrolet built a little over 1,000 COPO 9561 Camaros in 1969, spread across dealers who'd caught on to the system. 201 of them went specifically to Yenko, who added a second order code on top, COPO 9737, a sports car conversion package bundling wider wheels, upgraded tires, a 140-mile-an-hour speedometer, and a stiffer front sway bar. Then distributed the finished cars through his own dealership and a network of 36 Yenko-authorized dealers across the country. Here's a detail most retellings leave out entirely. Not all 201 Yenko Camaros actually started as Yenko's own orders. A dealer in Chicago named Jack Douglas found the COPO paperwork sitting inside one of the very first Yenko cars he received, realized exactly what it was, and quietly placed his own direct order with Chevrolet using the same code. No different process, no special connection required, just the same open door Yenko had found. When Yenko found out, the two dealers worked out an arrangement rather than a dispute. Roughly 25 of the 201 Yenko Camaros collectors talk about today were actually built through Douglas's own order, badged with Yenko's stripes and emblems afterward. The loophole wasn't exclusive. Once one dealer found it, it was just sitting there for the next one too. Chevrolet's response to all of this wasn't a crackdown. It was closer to quiet institutional participation. Piggins worked the relationship from inside the company, and the paperwork process simply kept running through 1969, exactly as designed, producing cars that violated the spirit of a corporate policy while never once breaking an actual law or forging a document. Nothing here was illegal. It was a gap between what a rule intended and what its paperwork actually enforced. And Yenko is simply the man who noticed the gap first and walked a Camaro through it. What happened to the cars afterward is where this story earns its ending. These are today among the most valuable muscle cars in the world. A standard '69 Yenko Camaro typically brings $250,000 to $450,000 at auction. An exceptionally original low-mileage Survivor sold for $715,000 at a Mecum auction in 2025. And in January of 2026, recently enough that the paint on this story is barely dry. The very first Yenko Camaro ever built, the pilot car Yenko used to prove the whole concept before the other 200 were ordered, sold at auction for $1.815 million, the highest price any Camaro has ever brought. That prototype ran an 11.94-second quarter mile on slicks during a Period magazine test, quicker than any other factory muscle car of the 1960s. Chevrolet never built another COPO Camaro after 1969, not until a modern SEMA-driven revival starting in 2011. Yenko wasn't even the only dealer working this exact gap in 1969 either. An Illinois dealer named Fred Gibb used the same COPO system around the same time to chase an even more extreme version, an aluminum block 427 called the ZL1, built almost purely for drag racing. Gibb ordered 50 of them, the minimum NHRA required for the engine to qualify for competition, but once the roughly $7,200 sticker price scared off buyers, his own dealership only managed to sell 13 of them. The rest got redistributed to other dealers around the country, along with 19 more ordered separately elsewhere, bringing the total to 69 cars sold through 41 different dealerships nationwide. Even the more extreme version of this loophole didn't stay contained to the one man who thought of it first. Yenko didn't stop finding homes for big engines once the Camaro program ended either. Through the early 1970s, he kept dropping Corvette drivetrains into Novus and Chevelle, and as late as 1981, he was still at it, bolting a turbocharger onto an ordinary 350 small block for what became his last build, the Turbo Z Camaro. Yenko didn't live to see any of those auction prices. He died on March 5, 1987, piloting his own Cessna into Yeager Airport in West Virginia. An experienced pilot with thousands of hours in the air on a hard landing that bounced, then went wrong. He was 59. The following year, his ashes rode along in a race car as co-driver in an event his own name had already been entered into before he died. Here's the actual ending, underneath the auction prices and the legacy. Chevrolet wrote a policy that said this engine would never go in this car. Nobody at GM ever had to repeal that policy, get overruled, or admit they were wrong. The paperwork just quietly built the exact car the policy existed to prevent, shipped it out under full factory warranty, and never once registered that anything had gone against the rule at all. GM didn't lose an argument. It lost without ever finding out there'd been one. Subscribe if you want the rest of this story, because Yenko didn't stop at the Camaro. He ran the same play on the Nova, the Chevelle, and years earlier on the Corvair. That's next.